Welcome to the LPL Brief. Since everything we're going to talk about are the quarterfinals, then we're going to go a little bit through the promos and then do the predictions for the semifinals. So the first match today in the quarterfinals was EDG Gaming versus WE, and I had predicted that EDG Gaming would win this, and a big reason I predicted this is because EDG Gaming used lane assignments and LGD's TP disadvantage against them to kind of rely on capitalizing on LGD's mistakes. WE don't have the cleanest early game, so I saw something similar possibly happening, but the problem is that VG Gaming kept taking these really awkward 5v5s. You don't want to take a 5v5 as VG Gaming because your AD carry is not going to be as good as the opponent's AD carry in general. So effectively what happens here is because they kept kind of forcing these 5v5s in disadvantageous situations, they ended up losing pretty big. I will say one thing I really enjoyed was WE's Karma comp. It was really well constructed. They had Lissandra, Kindred, and this is the better version of the comp. They ran it a couple times, so I'm just going to talk about the one that I like the best. Lissandra, Kindred, Karma, Sivir, and Bard. So all these champions synergize pretty well, like the catch with the Bard, using the speed up tools to catch up to where the Bard ult is, the Lissandra engage to follow up, the fact that you can kind of stack Bard and Kindred ult, it's all really nicely worked together, and it's a very fast comp, and it's very good at anti-push because you have a lot of wave clear. This comp just does, and a lot of damage, this comp just does pretty much everything you want. So I really liked that, and it was something that VG Gaming eventually acknowledged they had to take away. Unfortunately, you know, they'd lost 2 games against it, and they didn't have much of a chance. And then in the final game, I think it was when they made the really poor decision to super overcommit to this perceived 4v4 when WE's top laner was split pushing against their AD carry. Just this decision making was so bad because you know that WE's top laner can TP in and the AD carry can't. So even if it's advantageous for you to take a 5v5, which as VG, as we've established, it's not, you don't want to take a 5v5. You don't want to take a fight at that point because it's a 5v4. Just always remember that if their TP is bottom against someone on your team who doesn't have TP, don't take the fight. That's the best way to put it. I said that some of the power picks of the series were definitely Sivir. I believe the game that VG Gaming won, they had Sivir. It's just super simple. Collapse with it, you kill things, it's easy. The Lissandra was obviously a big thing. It was also in the winning games. And Dandy's Nidalee was huge in the first game because Dandy's efficiency with Nidalee was really strong because you can take advantage of doing both the things that Dandy needs to do as a carry jungler, which is farm with really fast clear speeds and gank a lot, and help the lanes because a lot of the lanes won't do anything unless you gank, and just his pathing was really efficient. He went from his side of the map, he went to the enemy red, and then he went back and he got the gank in the mid lane. Mid lane is often a really contested gank point because it's a constant hold, whereas the side lanes are sometimes lane swapped, sometimes other things. So this is a big way that VG Gaming got an advantage in the game where Dandy played Nidalee. Another pick was Mystic's Ezreal. A lot of people ask me, why is VG Gaming banning Ezreal and Kalista? Well, those are probably by far Mystic's best champions, and if your AD carry is endless, you want to neutralize this advantage as much as possible. So I think those bans actually weren't bad. I would say the Ezreal was huge in the final game. Mystic can, from a deficit, often carry with the Ezreal, so this is a big power pick that I would actually ban against WE regardless, because I think relative to his other picks, his Ezreal is just really strong, so why would you give it to him? We'll get more into what I think of WE's prospects and get to the preview for semis. Versus Snake is the next set. And the reason why I rate EDG so highly, and I have been, is just in general the fluidity of their decision making and their lane assignments. And this is somewhat difficult to talk about it, so I'm probably going to need Rift Kit. Okay, Rift Kit, and I'm once again using it incorrectly and probably will never learn. First thing to discuss is when Clearlove pass, he often prioritizes getting Scuttle before getting a second buff. This is something that we're going to talk about because he did it in this particular series. So, if for example, you start blue, okay, you're on red side, you Clearlove did, and you go around, many people would continue, passing this way, they take this camp, but Clearlove sometimes will take this camp, but often he'll go down here and he'll take Scuttle before he takes red buff. From here, sometimes he'll gank, or he'll pressure a lane swap, or he'll just invade and he'll take the enemy grump. Okay, so this is something he often does, and he'll leave the red buff for later. This is something that allows you to have a lot more control over the jungle, because it ensures you almost always will get the scuttle, right? Because if the jungle is clearing 2 camps and you're just clearing 1, it doesn't matter what side the enemy jungler starts, you're very likely going to get the scuttle before him. Another option is to take this, go down, take the scuttle, go back. I've seen him do this a couple times, take this, and then just take the scuttle and go back and get red. But this is slightly more risky, takes more time, and I think you give up more creeps and can fall behind more easily, really. So if you do this often, you want to be on a hyper ganking early jungle like Kindred or Nidalee or something, and immediately gank after you get the second scuttle to try to compensate for and take the kill if you're a carry jungle. So that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. The reason why I really like this is because if you do get the scuttle, you have a great deal of control over like entry and entrance, because the scuttle area is actually quite large, and you get the speed shrine, you have all this control topside where you literally just have free vision, you have free everything, and if you want to invade frequently and control a particular side of the map the way EDG do, this is very useful. And by a particular side of the map, I now want to talk about kind of their game 1 lane swap decision. So what happened was EDG were topside and they got this turret. So then what EDG did is what most teams do, is that after they were ahead, they decided to B and go back bottom. The thing is that what Snake did was they went and they took this turret, then they B'd, and then they went back bottom. So you have both dual lanes bottom. So what EDG did is they tried to take advantage of this situation to find ways to get more advantages. So what they did is they had Koro push out really hard, and they put Clearlove, around here with some vision. And since he had this speed, since he had this scuttle secured, and he had controlled this area since the beginning of the game, they had a lot more ability to do this. Also, the Nidalee came up over here, so if you have to keep securing control of the scuttle, obviously. And Nidalee also came up from this side and decided, oh, the top is overextended. So this is a very obvious bait, because if you're extending over here, it's very likely that the jungle will come, because otherwise you're just creating way too much pressure for free. So CZR comes and he sees this. Clearlove, I think, is like farming over here or something. He's staying on the top side, but he's not necessarily there. And you can get away with this a lot more because you're playing Maokai, and Maokai just literally doesn't die for any reason. CZR comes and attacks. Clearlove comes, and then Clearlove gets out, backs, and they teleport in, and they manage to get the first blood here. So that was kind of a creative play that was based on, first of all, making sure you're controlling the top side of the map with Scuttle, and taking advantage of the fact that Snake went bottom to try to find an additional advantage outside of another turret that would accelerate the team's lead. Another thing that EDG do that I think is really interesting that you don't necessarily see other Chinese teams do is if you and they managed to put a lot of resources in one side of the map, they're not going to waste that. So in the first game also, they tried to create a gank, but there was a TP that countered it. So they decided it was no longer a safe play. And a lot of teams might disperse after this or something like this, but EDG immediately like try to get an advantage here, and they go and they take the red buff because they're able to react quickly and get there before the rest of the team. So this is a bit risky because the same players are still here, but because EDG were going fast, they could do this. One more thing I wanted to talk about was in game 2, and the way that EDG have been executing duo carry. Carry can be mid, ADC, a bunch of other things. Because of the way the meta is right now, it's very EDG favored because their two best players are probably their jungle and their AD carry. So you can have Deft play a carry and you can have Clearlove play a carry. So that's very good. And both and top will play a tank and mid will play some sort of distraction role. Mid can literally play whatever they want. I said this about Pawn so many times. The crazier shit Pawn plays, the better it is for EDG. So when he picked Fizz with that weird rabbit skin and everything else, it literally did no damage, but he ran around like a crazy person. This is what EDG wants. Behind like 40 CS, but he was still just, it's Pawn. You know, I've gotten over it. A lot of people have suggested to me if EDG had Rookie, they could be like a truly good team, but I just think that the way they work, Pawn is perfect because you don't necessarily need another carry threat, especially in the current meta. And Pawn just does crazy stuff, and he's good at it. So that's fine. But the point is that if you want to do this, you need to find a way to allocate more farm onto your AD. So they do this a lot by using teleport. G2 in Europe actually do something similar where they use teleport to get first blood with their top laner. So Kikis or Coral will teleport to a lane that needs a gank and they'll get first blood off of this. In the lane swap scenario, you had EDG coming up, you had vision of the jungle, so that you knew the jungle was going to join. You had top here because there was some sort of weird snake fumble with the lane swap, so they had their top and they had a couple others, and EDG countered by bringing practically their entire team except Clearlove, who knew that most of the rest of the team was top except for the mids, right? Most of the rest of the team was top, so he could deal with their AD carry and support duo pushing, and he got all of this free farm while EDG were executing this play. So the casters, for example, made note of when Daft came back bot, Crystal was like 20 CS up, but Clearlove had a ridiculous amount of free farm. So it was just a difference in which AD carry they were allocating farm to at that given time because, you know, Deft and friends got a kill up here, so they were still getting some farm, but Clearlove was able to get a bunch of free scaling from that. Just this idea of EDG are thinking a lot more right now about their lane assignments and how they want to take advantage of swap situations and how the team will think and react to lane swap trades. That is making me think that EDG are in a really good place. Their shot calling is being very decisive and they're being creative with some of these ideas that they're doing. So I already touched briefly on why I think the meta really suits EDG, which is that their two best carries are probably their AD carry and their jungle, and both of them can just play carry champions and scale and do a lot of damage. I would say that another reason is the tank meta, and a lot of people like to say that Korra can only play tanks, and in the past he's played a lot of carries, but this was like the peak of his performance. So in general, he's just more suited to playing this tank utility role for sure. And part of this, I think, is Koro, but part of it I also think is the way that EDG operate, because they're not going to necessarily want to use Koro as their main carry. So they'll find other ways for him to be useful, and he's very good at certain aspects of tank play. I've talked about the unique use of teleports that he has, well, the nearly unique, because for example, Adonno also does this, where you are able to get into a fight, you get down to almost low health, you can back at the right time and then TP back in to maximize the use of your items, even if you don't have as many items. And then of course, like mid is like this tertiary thing that you can kind of do what you want with it. You mostly just, as long as you wave clear, you're fine. And you have all these playmaking engaged supports, so just almost everything is falling into place for the way that Edward Gaming like to play. So right now they're extremely suited to the meta, and the only thing that was kind of missing was the strategic thinking that could fall into place, which right now of course is still inconsistent. They had the fumble with the Tanks TF where they didn't quite predict that and Tank got a triple kill really early if that were a better team than Snake, which Snake are bad. Here's Snake are really terrible. Then that would not have been good for them. But as it is, I think EDG are looking really strong. And if they do make the MSI, I think that they'll do better than expected. And by that, I don't mean they'll win, or even that they can necessarily challenge Rocks Tigers or some team like this, but that they'll be competitive with the EU teams at least. The EU team at least, which people might think is a daring statement after Worlds and IEM. I briefly wanted to talk about the promos just because I think Young Miracles will probably make the LPL. They're much better than HYG. If M3 had made it and beaten HYG like I thought, it may have been harder because I think M3 has slightly more dimensions, but there's just not really any redeeming quality to HYG. So I just think that YM will brute force over them. Young Miracles are a really, really talented team with like a carry style top laner and a really strong bottom lane. And their jungler is kind of like, you think of Young Miracles as the Huni and Rainover, where Klaus is the Huni top laner, and Marilyn is the Rainover, who's like constantly camping him and things like this, then that's a pretty good statement. Ning and Ming are the duo bottom lane, and their synergy and friendship is as disgusting as their matching names. Ning is really, really strong. I'd like to see him in the LPL on a good team developing into something that, you know, you always want to know if like this will be the next great player at X or whatever. So I haven't really felt this way about a player in a while, so I'm really excited for Ning. Viper is super not good. Viper's not very good. He will have to play some kind of utility or teleport heavy or map pressure role. I think his teleports are usually pretty on point, and this was the strength of Young Miracles. But his individual mechanics and his ability to carry is just not there. So TF, Lysandra, really good picks for him. Rise, really good picks for right now. But the Klaus carry top thing, not really being invoked, does hurt them. The biggest thing that hurts them though is initially Young Miracles actually learned to lane swap before a lot of the other teams in the LPL, but their lane swap style kind of just stagnated, where they would get the first turret, they would rotate the second turret. So all these creative adaptations that I'm talking about, where teams can kind of take advantage of, and where EDG can take advantage of certain things, Young Miracles never really accelerated to. And they kind of just stopped doing it. They started doing standard lanes, trying to take advantage of Klaus and Ning. They don't have a coach. PDG showed up to the venue during the LSPL playoffs to help them with Big Ben, because otherwise they just pick random shit, basically. So these are all problems facing the Young Miracles. I still think they'll make it in, but I'd really like to see them improve their support staff if they're going to do it, because I think this could be a team that could be good. MF Gaming, there's not a lot to say about them. Their new jungler Ori is an upgrade. He has pretty good synergy with the mid laner. They rely a lot on invading and putting down pink wards. So this is something that I think is exploitable, especially if your jungle collapse and jungle utilization and EPA is really good. It could also really backfire them. So I think that EPA will probably be at MF because EPA just have a better sense for playing around the jungle. I'm going to predict 3-2 IM just because for continuing their pseudo reverse sweep trend, even though they did lose their last game to EDE. It was almost double reverse sweep into the LPL qualification. And then I think EPA will probably 3-0 MF. This leads us to finally discussing the semifinals. Royal Never Give Up and QG Reapers. QG versus EDG. Royal Never Give Up versus WE. Since I only so far have had success predicting the top side of the bracket, Snake versus IG, EDG versus Snake, and haven't gotten anything right on the bottom side of the bracket, I'm just going to predict the top side of the bracket. No. I'll make predictions for both. EDG versus QG. If you haven't been keeping up with the QG drama, don't. Really, it's not worth it. They're only telling one side of the story. Apparently, the Tom Facebook was even possibly a fake. Everyone's basically saying that Swift is literally Stalin, and I mean, the the Tom post makes some comment that Swift can't even speak Chinese. I know for a fact he can. He's fluent. I'm not able to post my interviews yet because of the drama that's going on, so I blame Joinby for that. So no interviews for QG for finals, which is sad. Semifinals, which is sad, but they'll probably just get destroyed by EDG. They're not in a good place. I think that EDG are firing much more on all cylinders. It's really just sad that this stuff happens because I do think that QG did a lot of smart things at the start of the split, and QG were doing really well, but then whatever this is happened. God only knows. I, I'm just gonna say though that if Swift really is Hitler, why are all of the other teammates ignoring Goinby, right? Why wouldn't they message him or say, okay, I'll duo with you? There are just a lot of inconsistencies in the story. It seems like there's another side to this. So before I make any additional judgments, I'm going to wait for it. Yeah, QG probably won't have a playstyle or anything. They'll literally have nothing, and EDG will just steamroll them 3-0. Royal Never Give Up versus WE. I don't think WE are good. I think WE capitalized a lot on VG's poor decision making in terms of just being better at team fighting and 5v5s. I think that if Royal make proactive moves early in side lanes like they did in the IG series, so I'm really excited to see Royal because we got this taste for this Royal that could be in the Invictus Gaming set, right? Where they were prioritizing side lanes. They got catches by setting up certain vision in the jungle and studying the enemy's pathing. They really quickly rotated lane assignments to get turrets extremely fast. They barely fought at all. To me, this is like the perfect team to destroy WE. So if they play like this, it should be 3-0. I think that because this strategy also relies on their bottom lane being ahead, there are instances where W could turn it back. So I think that WE might win a game. And I know I've predicted a lot of 3-1s, but yeah, I kind of feel like even if this is Royal's new identity, they won't execute it consistently. And if it isn't Royal's new identity, they'll probably just be messy again, and they'll take control of 3 games, but then there will be one that gets away. You know, the epic Condi Baron throw, which there hasn't been one of these yet. So anyway, this is pretty much all I have to say about the LPL brief. We'll see you next week for a finals preview, probably.